In a recent Bible study reflection on the 25th chapter of 1 Samuel, we find a story defined by profound tension. It is a historical account of a conflict that teetered on the very edge of disaster. David is now without the man who first anointed him. Samuel's death removes the primary spiritual mentor and elder who once provided a moral compass for his actions. Without Samuel, David's situation is entirely unmoored. He is currently a fugitive living in the harsh wilderness, bearing the immense weight of commanding a desperate, rough-around-the-edges militia of 600 men. Living near this wilderness is a man named Nabal. Nabal possesses immense wealth, but his character is completely bankrupt. He is exceedingly foolish and notoriously harsh and aggressively ungrateful. Then there is Nabal's wife, Abigail. She acts as a stark, direct contrast to her husband. Abigail is deeply intelligent, marked by diplomatic wisdom, and highly regarded for her beauty. You have David, volatile and grieving in the desert. You have Nabal, wealthy and arrogant. And you have Abigail, the solitary voice of reason. Together, they form a psychological powder keg, waiting for a single spark to set it off. Prior to this moment, David's militia and Nabal's camp actually had a functioning relationship. David's men faithfully protected Nabal's shepherds and flocks out in the wilderness without stealing a single animal from his vast inventory. In the culture of the era, there was a strict expectation for this kind of unofficial security. When a wealthy landowner profited from that protection, it was customary to provide a reward of basic supplies when politely requested. David sends 10 men to make that polite request. Nabal blatantly violates the cultural custom. He rejects the request entirely, aggressively turning them away and hurling a series of venomous insults directly at David's men. When the message reaches David, he completely loses his temper. The rejection pushes him over the edge, and he immediately mobilizes his troops with a single, brutal objective: slaughter every innocent male in Nabal's household. David is now moving toward a massacre based entirely on a bruised ego. He has shifted from a leader seeking provisions to a commander seeking the systematic elimination of an entire household, including those who did him no harm. Word of David's impending, heavily armed march reaches Nabal's estate. While Nabal remains entirely oblivious to the chaos he just caused, Abigail's situational awareness kicks in. She grasps the existential threat to her household instantly. Looking at this map tracking the advancing force, we see the logistics of her problem. Abigail doesn't panic. She pivots. She independently initiates a massive crisis management protocol while David's men march. The volume of the peace offering she gathers is staggering. She loads a caravan with fresh bread, wine, sheep, and grain. True wisdom in the face of destruction requires rapid action to intercept the disaster before it breaches your gates. Abigail intercepts David physically on the road. The moment she sees him, she drops to the ground and bows at his feet. It is an immediate display of extreme humility, acting as a complete rejection of her husband's towering arrogance. She then executes a highly calculated diplomatic strategy. First, she deliberately absorbs the full blame for her husband's foolishness. By taking the fault onto herself, she effectively diffuses David's primary target of aggression. Next, she forces a perspective shift. She redirects David's focus entirely away from this petty, momentary vengeance and reminds him of his grand, divine destiny as the future king of Israel. Finally, she delivers a strictly logical warning. If he slaughters innocent people today, that blood will permanently stain his conscience and legitimize the criticisms of his political enemies tomorrow. Here, we see David's crucial character strength. Despite his burning anger and the fact that he has hundreds of armed men backing him, he refuses to be stubborn. He chooses to listen to reason, and he finally halts his murderous advance. Successful de-escalation requires two equal halves. It needs a peacemaker brave enough to speak the hard truth, and it requires a powerful leader who is humble enough to swallow their pride and actually listen. The conflict diffuses, and David returns to the wilderness. It isn't until the next morning that Nabal finally learns exactly how close his arrogance brought his entire household to total annihilation. The sheer terror of this realization triggers a severe physiological reaction. Nabal's body turns rigid like stone, paralyzing him entirely. 10 days later, he dies by God's hand. With Nabal dead, the immediate historical resolution falls into place. David sends for Abigail and marries her, officially recognizing and valuing the unparalleled wisdom she displayed on the road. Historically speaking, David's multiple marriages, taking Abigail and Ahinoam as wives after his first wife Michal was given to another man, planted deep seeds for future family strife. Yet, in the broader biblical narrative, God still viewed David's overall path as righteous. Because David completely relinquished his right to personal vengeance, he didn't have to carry the moral weight of a massacre. He allowed divine justice to execute a much cleaner, more definitive resolution. When anger dictates a decision, the result rarely accounts for logic. David's initial plan would have secured the supplies he needed, but his rage nearly cost him the very moral standing he would eventually need as king. There are spiritual mechanics at play in restraint. Refusing to give in to impulsive, retaliatory urges actively denies the devil a foothold in your life, and it leaves the battlefield wide open for God's intervention. The confrontation between Abigail and David proves that stepping back from our own wrath and choosing to trust God is the only way to ensure true justice is served without staining our own souls.